Well, spring is finally here, and that means it's time to get our hands back in the dirt. In this video, we're starting our early spring planting and expanding our garden to make room for even more homegrown goodness. We'll show you what we're planting first and how we're preparing the new garden space and the steps we're taking to set ourselves up for a productive growing season. There's something so special about this time of year: fresh soil, cool mornings, and the promise of what's to come. If you've been thinking about starting or expanding your own garden, I hope this video gives you some encouragement and inspiration. Every year we learn something new, and this season is no different. Let us know in the comments, what are you planting this spring? Now, in these first few pictures that you've been seeing, I had pictures of our garden from last year and how beautiful it was and how well it did, and then pictures of our garden this year as we're getting started. We're planning to add 4 feet to this side of the garden and 8 feet to the other side. We have rototilled the area, raked out the weeds of this section, and this area still needs weeds to be rototilled a few times and then raked. We plan to get some cattle panels for the edge of this section. As you can see, we have already rototilled this section. We're hoping to make that our strawberry patch. And we've rototilled this section a couple times so far because it is a new section, so it had to be rototilled and raked. And you see this section hasn't been rototilled yet, but we will be bringing that out 8 feet. Our main plan isn't so much to plant more things, it's to have more room for the things we do plant, because it can get very crowded once June and July come around and everything is flourishing. It gets very crowded. You see my husband rototilling again here. He's getting ready. He's planning on planting some sweet corn where he's at there. He plans on planting 3 rows. And you don't have to rototill. That's his choice. He likes to rototill. In our garden, we kind of each have our own sections. And in my section, as you'll see later, in the past few years, I've used cardboard to keep the weeds out. And then I put hay or straw on top of that. And, over time it disintegrates. And it makes really good dirt for the plants. And this year, I'm going to go ahead, I think, and let him rototill my area rather than putting down the cardboard. The cardboard needs to be put down in the fall so that it can, disintegrate some over winter. And this last fall, I didn't put cardboard down. I did have hay down, and therefore I don't have a huge amount of weeds, but I did get weeds in my section. I do my sections a lot more wildly and loosely than he does. He's kind of old school with his way of doing things. He doesn't want cardboard in his sections. This coming fall, I probably will put more cardboard down. It just helps keep the weeds, and it breaks down. He likes to use string and measure out his rows. I mean, he's much more strict with his gardening ways. Like I said, my ways are a lot more loose and wild. I don't measure anything, and I don't use string. He likes his rows to be equal apart and straight. We normally don't use any kind of fertilizer in our garden. We're talking about maybe doing some this year just because the area has been very used over the last few years. We've had a lot of things grow, but you got to put some nutrients back in the soil. So we may get some 10-10-10 or 13-13-13 and put in our areas. Now the sweet corn that he's planting is heirloom. We try to use heirloom seeds whenever we can, but I also buy some Dollar Tree seeds, and they do pretty well too. There again, he likes to use the heirloom seeds for his sections, and then you can always save seeds for the following years and have a pretty good chance of things coming up. He also plans later on, when things warm up more, that area he's in, just past it, he's going to put some cantaloupe and watermelon in that area too. We do have a lot of expanding that we're doing this year that you'll be seeing. This video is just a compilation of everything we did in February. But we will be putting up more cattle panels and obviously planting a lot more things. As the weather gets warmer and warmer, you can plant more and more things. Right now, it's mostly cold weather items. He is planting his sweet corn. Some people wait until closer, middle of March, closer, and then even into maybe April 1st. But we're just taking a chance this year, planting it now. He plans on putting the cantaloupes and watermelons in this area because where we planted them last year is a different part of our yard, and it was a little lower section, and it got flooded. And so we're going to try to avoid that by putting them here. But they spread out so much. If you're lucky and they're doing well, they spread out, take up a lot of room. That's why we had to expand this side that he's on by 8 feet to give plenty of room for everything. You see those logs along the edge on the left there. Those will get moved closer. You'll see in later video, they're more of an edging. Those came from a storm that we had a couple years ago that took down some of our trees, and I just thought it would be a good idea to use them as a border for the garden. I just like how it looks rustic, and it helps with the weeds a little bit. Keeps them from going across the border. If you're planting some items, I'd love to know what you're planting. Just let me know in the comments. Let me know if you think you should wait till later in the spring, or if you're like us and you just can't wait. Now this area that he's rototilling here is our potato area. This is the area where we had the watermelons and cantaloupes last year. And it just depends on the weather, because one year we had things planted here and it was so dry, it was hard to keep everything wet enough to get a good crop. And then last year it flooded, so you just never know. Farming is just kind of taking chances. We're going to have russet potatoes in this area, and red potatoes, and sweet potatoes. That small tree that you see is an orange tree. I also had a lemon tree, but it died in the freeze that we had. We put the tree there, not planning on planting anything again, like I say, because it flooded last year, but we're taking a chance again. But the tree had already been planted there, so we're just going to work around it. So far, it's surviving. It went through the freeze and it hurt the leaves that were on it, but it's still green, so hopefully it'll survive. The year when it was so hot that this section just dried up so bad is when we had planted corn, sweet corn there. So the sweet corn didn't do very well. So then last year we planted the watermelon and cantaloupe, and it flooded. Now we got maybe 6 watermelon and 6 cantaloupe, but a lot of we would have had more, but a lot of them got a rot to them, so they got fed to the chickens. We also, about 3 years ago, we had planted sunflowers in this section, and they did really well. That was a good year. Wasn't too wet, wasn't too dry, and it was sunflowers, and they did really well. I'm really excited about the fact that we're expanding the garden and putting up more cattle panels and just kind of making it a more organized and functioning kind of a garden. We started, if you look at my older videos, I have videos where the garden was pretty small. It did really well, but it was pretty small. And each year we've expanded a little bit at a time and tried different things, and I have that in a lot of videos. We use cattle panels for my archways, and we're going to be adding another cattle panel to the end of the archway that I already have, making it another 4 feet. And that's where I have raspberries growing. And then in another section, I plan on putting up an archway and probably have cucumbers on it. Here you see my husband digging up a raspberry that had decided it was going to grow there in our path. On the left-hand side there, I have raspberries that we had planted, and we've grown raspberries and gotten raspberries from it. And evidently, they vine underneath that walkway, and it was coming up. So we're planting it in a section that's meant for the raspberries. We've got those cattle panels there. We did have a raspberry come up on the other side of that walkway too, and we just let it go because it wasn't in the path that we walk, and it's doing really well too. We also bought a couple more raspberry plants. You see him planting there. We're just trying to expand it. I happen to love raspberries and strawberries, so we're kind of going whole hog on berries this year. Hopefully they'll do well. The original ones that we put in like 3 years ago, they've spread, and that's why we put those 2 cattle panels up last fall to help them with their spreading. They need some support, so it's helping support them. We're also going to plant some peas along those cattle panels since the raspberries haven't gone that far down the cattle panels yet. I don't want to waste the space. So we're going to plant some peas there. You want to use all the space that you have. And you'll see later in the video we're adding some more cattle panels on the edge of the garden in that section. So that's where we're going to plant our strawberries, between the one set of cattle panels that have the raspberries and then the new set that we'll be putting up later in this video. That'll be my little strawberry patch. I also plan on putting some tomato plants along. Tomatoes are a pretty good companion for strawberries. Strawberries are actually a very good cover crop too in a garden. They don't really fight with anything, and they cover the ground and help keep it moist. Plus you get strawberries. You may have noticed those spinners that I have on the archway. That helps keep the birds off my raspberries when they're growing. And it may look a little goofy, but it really does work. I need to redo them a little bit because last year the vines grew in such a way that it kind of keeps some of them from actually spinning. So I just need to reposition them when I get a chance. Now this section is my section of the garden, and he hasn't rototilled it yet. In this part of the video you see the weeds are starting to come up, but because I do usually have the cardboard there and hay, those weeds are pretty easy to pull. I'll be pulling them up here, and you'll see I get a couple 5-gallon buckets of weeds that I can give to my chickens, and my chickens love getting their greens. I have, from the beginning of this video and then in some of my old videos, you'll see that we had pole beans on those little teepees, and we're going to use them again. I think they'll be fine for this year. I don't know if they'll last through to next year again, but I think they'll be okay for this year to have pole beans on them. And you see my husband rototilling. The pole beans did very well in that area last year. I use spinners in that area too. And I also, when I have the teepees up, I make little dangly things out of pie tins, hang them in the middle of those teepees, and they clank together in the wind, and that helps keep the squirrels out of them. I've never really had any trouble with the squirrels messing with anything in that area. When he gets done rototilling, I'll rake all the weeds out, and we'll put the teepees back up, put some beans down at the bottom in the ground, and I'll put some straw over it to help keep the ground moist. You see that tunnel there, it got damaged in our ice storm that we had about a month ago. The roof collapsed because we left the shade cloth on it, and we shouldn't have. You see, I've got some cabbage plants in that little tunnel area in pots, and then I have some empty pots there. I'm going to put some cauliflower and broccoli in, some seeds. We grew in hay bales in that tunnel last year. We had tomatoes and basil and squash and zucchini and cucumbers, and they did okay, but I'm not going to use the hay bale method again this year. I don't think it was that great. We'll put some dirt down over the decaying hay bales, and we'll plant in that tunnel, but my husband's got to fix that roof first. When we put the teepees back up, they did break in a couple spots, but they'll be fine. I think they'll make it through this season. I'll be putting marigolds down also, the whole perimeter of my garden. I put marigolds, and they get huge, and they're so pretty. You saw there for a second my flower garden over there. It needs some work. I'll be planting seeds over there. The marigolds help with bugs. They help keep bugs out. There really should be a ton of marigold seeds there naturally from the ones that were there last year, but I'll be putting some more seeds. You see my husband, he's going to be adding the sweet potatoes there in this section of the video. I've got a video about it, but I've got peppers, tomatoes, I've got beets, carrots, onions, radishes, romaine, and leaf lettuce, all growing in small pots up on my deck. And I'll be transplanting those into the ground when they get tall enough. And I'll have videos about that. I will wait till it gets just a little bit warmer. Probably in a couple more weeks I'll be planting my herbs. I have rosemary, sage, and parsley that made it through the winter, but that's about it for the herbs. I'll have to start from seed for the rest. This section of the video is me planting everything I was just saying: the beets, carrots, onions, radishes, lettuces, spinach, all that. I really like to reuse any items that I can. You see I'm planting into rotisserie chicken containers, and they work really well to just get your little plants going if you're going to transplant them. And honestly, the spinach and lettuce, you wouldn't necessarily have to transplant to the ground because they could grow in these containers. They're a couple inches deep, and that's enough to grow some spinach and leaf lettuce. I put bone meal and blood meal in with the dirt. If you want to consider that like a fertilizer, that's one of the only things I've ever used. But we are, like I say later, we are going to put some fertilizer on our garden, but it usually helps adding it to the dirt. And there I'm adding ash. I always add ash to my dirt, mix it up good, and put the seeds in. Also, you'll see me in this part of the video, I'm going to be planting some nasturtium seeds. Those are like a vining flower, and those are really good for keeping the squash bugs off of cabbage and broccoli and such, squash. Also, coming up in the video, I'll be planting a lot of peppers: sweet peppers, cayenne peppers, jalapeno peppers. I'll have a little section in the video showing you these seeds that I'm planting here are, it took about 2 weeks, and they're starting to come up now. I did have an incident. If you watch the actual video that this little excerpt came from, I was planting the seeds, and I was using Dollar Tree seeds, and one of the packages had no seeds in it. And I've never really had that happen before, but it had 0 seeds in it. But overall, the seeds that I get from Dollar Tree work pretty well. You see me showing them there. Those are all Dollar Tree seeds. I also use seeds that I saved from last year's vegetables too. It's kind of a mix. I add fish emulsion into the water as the plants are growing. That helps sort of fertilize them also. I also use pots that I get from the floral department of the grocery store I work at. They just throw them away, and they're really nice pots. And I have, you'll see here in this video in a little while, I have some containers that I got from McDonald's. They're like pickle buckets and pickle containers. And I used those last year for my seedlings. And they worked really well. They only last about a season, they break down. But I do try to use, as inexpensive of things or free things as I possibly can. Try to be frugal. When I do buy plants from a nursery or maybe a Home Depot, I try to save those containers too. And I always try to reuse those. You don't realize how many pots you need till you go to plant your items. And people who don't have enough room for a garden, you can use some of these pots and have on your porch or your deck and have a few, maybe a tomato plant, a pepper plant. And that might be enough for you and your family. Maybe you don't want to can and preserve. Maybe you just want to have a few things you can go out and eat when they're ready and put them into your food. But like I say, I have the full video of this planting if you're interested in, listening to me give all the details of everything that I'm doing and what I'm using and such. This, like I said before, this is like a compilation video of everything we did in February. So I'm kind of speeding through it. I also have a lot of videos of former years of our garden. Like I said, showing it as it was growing and how beautiful it gets in the summertime. And we really do get a lot of food out of it. We went from about a 10 by 20 garden in the beginning to a 20 foot by 50 foot to about a 20 foot by 100 foot. And then now this year, it's going to be about 35 feet by 100 feet. I mean, it's a large size garden now. And we're not even done yet. We still got some more expanding we want to do. That storm I told you about that we got the border tree stumps from, we also had a huge pile of wood chips. And that lasted us a couple years, and we put that on the garden too. Now that takes, a year or two to fully break down, but it's been long enough now that it's broken down and helped make the dirt. We have earthworms and everything now, and it's pretty healthy dirt. You saw there I had some used pots from previous plants that I had purchased out. That's what I plant my peppers and tomato baby seeds in. And my nasturtiums. Let me know in the comments if you've ever bought Dollar Tree seeds and did not have any seeds in the packet. I'd love to know if that happened to anybody else. I never really thought about it happening before. Also, let me know if you do, live in an apartment or you have a small property and you grow your items in pots on your porch or deck. I'd love to know how that works for you. Maybe you have a raised garden. I like raised gardens. They're just I feel like they're expensive. I guess if you can get that first initial cost out of the way, then they're worth it. And I know as we get older, I'm getting close to it now, just needing to have a raised garden, but I can still get down on the ground and crawl around, so I'll keep my garden as it is for now. I do have a couple raised beds. They fell apart. They were damaged in that ice storm, but my husband, he fixed one up and he's going to be fixing the other one up. I have that in video too. Here I'm planting the nasturtiums. I'm putting that mixture of bone meal and blood meal and ash mixed in with dirt, putting that in those pots. And then after they get to be a few inches tall, I'll put them out in the garden. And like I said, that helps with bugs. That and the marigolds help a lot. And I always put lemongrass out in my garden, and that helps with repelling the bugs also. And basil. I always put basil by my tomatoes, and that helps keep the tomato worms out. So there's lots of natural ways. You don't need bug spray or any kind of chemicals. There's lots of ways nature will help you repel bugs. You just need to do your research. I know you see in the video I'm such a messy person. I have videos too. We have a section along our one section of our fence. We have elderberry bushes, and last year we got about 12 gallons of elderberries, and I have made 2 sets of elderberry syrup. I get 24 bottles each time, and I take it every night. I take a shot glass every night, and my husband takes a shot glass with his breakfast. We just choose to do it that way, but I really believe that it keeps us from getting sick. Neither one of us have been sick for years, and I have videos on how to make the elderberry syrup, and it's really not hard. It's tedious because the berries are so small, and they, you have to, there's a process. If you're interested, you can check out that video. It's simple, it's anyone can do it. It's just a little bit time consuming, but it's worth it. And I recommend taking elderberry syrup to keep from getting sick. Here in the video, you see the containers I was talking about. I got those for free from our floral department. They use them for keeping flowers in, and sometimes plants come in them, but they throw them away when they're done with them and they're not using them. So I got a few of those, and they're good. They're very good for growing stuff in, especially to get things started. But you could grow a tomato plant or a pepper plant in one of those very easy, and leave it in there, and get you some tomatoes and peppers. I also have videos. We have black walnut tree, and we have 7 pecan trees, and so I have a video of us power washing the walnuts, the black walnuts, getting them ready to hang and dry. I haven't done a video about the pecans yet, but I might plan to do that if anybody's interested. Just kind of give information about pecan trees. The trees that we have are over 100 years old, and they're about 5 foot in diameter across like that. I don't know what the circumference would be. They'd be huge, but they're very tall. And that's the trees that lost the limbs in that windstorm we had a few years ago that we got all those tree stumps from for the garden. It was kind of devastating. I have a video about it. It was called, I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a little tornado, and it took the limbs out of our trees, and those limbs were the size of a tree just themselves, and it ruined our garden for that year. But the garden was small that year. I hope if you like this video, I hope you check out some of my other videos and like them if you like them, and I hope you subscribe. I have videos about motorcycle trips we've taken, and lots of garden videos. And I used to work at a nursing home. I got some nursing home fun videos. I was an activity director, and that was a lot of fun before I retired. And I have a video on sourdough making and butter making and lots of other videos. I hope you'll check them out. And like I said, I hope you'll like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to you. And Like I said before, if you have any tips or tricks for gardening, I'd love to hear them. If you think that the way I do things is weird, I would, you can tell me and I'll read your comments and we can have a conversation. I just try to do things as simple and easy and inexpensive as possible. And so far it's worked for me. I hope maybe you've gotten a few, maybe even some tips or tricks from watching the video. If you have seen some of my other videos and you want to comment on that, I'd love to hear about it. If you have any questions about anything. I also have videos on estrangement because I'm dealing with that. And I have videos on just retirement issues, thoughts. And I have a little part-time job as a cashier at a grocery store in the fuel center. So I have some videos, just boomer ramblings, But I'd love to hear from you if you have any comments or questions. Well, I hope you have a wonderful spring, a wonderful summer. I hope if you're into gardening that you have a great growing season. And know that, in my opinion, God is behind it all. He's the reason everything does well. And I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless. Be sure and check out my upcoming videos. I'll have a compilation video for March plantings and how the plants are doing too. So I hope to see you at those. Here you can see the plants are starting to come up. Little babies. I love seeing the plants come up.